Hey everyone, welcome to Darshan Talks. I am your host, Darshan Kulkarni. It's my mission to help patients trust the products they depend on. As you know by now, I'm an attorney, I'm a pharmacist, and I advise companies with FDA regulated products. So if you ever think about drugs or wonder about medical devices, if you consider cannabis or obsess over pharmacy, this is the podcast for you. Um, I would love for you to actually subscribe to this and leave a comment because it lets me know that you're thinking. So please do that. Love to hear from you. You can also reach me on Darshan Talks on Twitter or just go to our website at darshantalks.com. Today's podcast is really going to be interesting. We've had this guest over several times, and it's always fun every time he comes on. We're going to be talking about the evolution of compliance and marketing and how that all is coming together. So if you are in marketing, if you are in compliance, if you are wondering about OPDP and wondering what Applebee means, you should probably care about today's discussion. Our guest today is the man. He is the myth. He is the legend. Dale, I didn't even ask you what your preferred term of management is. Are you the CEO of Cook Solutions?
I'm the president of Philly Consulting and the president of FDA.
There you go. Thank you. Well, you seem surprised.
No, I'm getting feedback. No, stop. Okay, great.
Okay, great. Our guest for today, ladies and gentlemen, Dale Cook. How are you, Dale?
I'm doing well, Darshan. How are you?
Good. So first of all, Dale, let me ask you a question. You have two separate companies.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
So I started off as a regulatory consultant working in FDA regulatory compliance issues, and then became a lawyer. And the issues that I deal with are, closely related. It's all in the world of advertising and promotion, but there are certain things that are clearly legal questions, and I can't do that out of the regulatory consulting practice because that would be outside the scope of, my liability insurance. it all comes down to insurance at the end of the day, doesn't it? And so as I was thinking about different ways to structure the companies, the easiest thing was just to establish a separate legal entity, FDA ad law. So
what's an example of a question that is definitely a legal question?
Sure. All sorts of privacy issues dealing with HIPAA, all sorts of First Amendment concerns, questions about, when you are advertising products whose categorization is itself suspect. And so the question gets to be, I teach food and drug laws, at Temple and at Drexel universities. And, it's all about the intended use, right? That's the thing, right? People walk into the class naively thinking that they know what a drug is or they know what a medical device is. And then you explain to them that no, actually the chair that you are sitting on might be a drug or a medical device, depending on the things that the person who is marketing that chair says about it. And they spend a few minutes thinking that you're, taking some drugs yourself, but then they realize, the implications of that and what that means and doing the intended use analysis, yada, yada, yada. All of that is clearly legal work that's being done and falls outside the realm of what I feel comfortable doing as an FDA regulatory consultant.
So, hey, Christine. Christine's already saying hello, so it's good to have Christine. Hey, Christine. So let's talk a little bit about the things that are happening, and what's new in the ad promo world. And the part that really jumps out to me, and we had a little bit of a pre-discussion before we jumped on, is this is the ECTD. So could you talk a little bit about what is the ECTD? Why does it matter in ad promo?
Sure. Yeah, so for as we're recording this, for anybody who's, it's on May 24th and 2021. And literally 1 month from today, June 24, 2021, all ad promo submissions to Appleby and to OPDP that are mandatory. So your 2253 filings of final samples of materials prior to dissemination, and your mandatory pre-approval submissions for Subpart H and Subpart E products. Those submissions must be made via ECTD and the gateway at fda.gov. And so it's 4 weeks from today. FDA finalized its guidance on how to submit these materials 2 years ago. And it was set in law by Congress that 2 years from the date that the guidance was finalized, the FDA could mandate this. So I don't know about you. I've had a lot of clients over the years going through the process of converting from the old system to the ECTD system. All of my clients are there, right? They've already done it. If you have not yet done it, oh boy. Yeah, because once you're finished with the process, you'll find that your life is easier and things are better, and it's not nirvana, but it's pretty close. But the getting to nirvana, getting there through the conversion, it's effort. It takes some work, and so we're right up against it. And I certainly hope that anybody who's watching this is sitting back, relaxing, and saying, yes, we're all finished with that. But if anybody is seeing this and saying, what's he talking about? Yeah, please get on it immediately, right?
So let's talk about that. What is the process like? What have you generally found to be? I imagine you did a little bit of a gap analysis to help people sort of figure out where they are and what they need to do. And what have you found to be the biggest problems? Like, what were they generally missing?
So ECTD, the Electronic Common Technical Document, is a way of communicating with health authorities all around the world. And companies have been using ECTD for all sorts of submissions to health authorities for years. The primary difference and what makes it a challenge for ad promo to adopt ECTD submissions was that ECTD submissions and the publishing units, either inside the company or the third-party publishers who were hired by companies, tend to work on low-volume, high-complexity documents. So the things that they're submitting, when you're submitting an NDA via ECTD or a supplement via ECTD, that's a very, very complicated document that you'll spend a lot of time working on, and you'll have very few of those submissions. By contrast, in the ad promo world, we're dealing with, generally speaking, low complexity documents with a very high volume. Right? So we might have 3, 4, or 5 submissions, in some cases per day, and that's just, not the same world that they're used to dealing with. Where they're dealing with maybe 1 or 2 submissions per quarter, we might have, that number of submissions before we have our coffee in the morning, right? So, that's the primary thing, is figuring out how to work that in so it doesn't become a hindrance. If you're using a review and approval system, then probably they've already built in, and you've been able to work through, communicating with the publishing systems, so that I hope it's a seamless process. But even still, some clients are going through this now where it's mandatory for those submissions I mentioned earlier, the 2253 at the time of dissemination, the pre-approval, the pre-dissemination submissions for Subpart H and Subpart E products, I should say for indications rather than products. And, the other submissions for things like advisory comments outside of those settings, you want to submit a TV spot, that's still voluntary. And so, companies have to figure out. All of the clients that I've worked with have all shifted those things also into ECTD. But, that's the type of thing that requires work and effort, and making sure that you got all of your I's dotted and your T's crossed.
So you're talking about essentially this process of really helping people get their processes together
Mhm.
so that it becomes more seamless. Here's my question. You talked about it being high volume, low complexity, which is great. My question for you is, what happens that it's so simple now? Do you expect that there'll be a rise in submissions?
No, I don't think it's going to change the volume of promotional materials that people are submitting. I mean, I think it will make it easier for FDA to manage. I've always been curious. I don't know, and one day I should just ask somebody down at OPDP. Like, is there a warehouse somewhere in White Oak or Bethesda that is just like that scene at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark with all of the materials that have been submitted? I mean, they get around 100,000 2253 submissions every year, and the
I
volume
thought
is
it was 88 last time I heard that. Are there new updated numbers? There must be, but I just
maybe 88 is the better number. I'd have to go check the
I
metrics
just
on the dashboard.
yeah.
But you sort of do that arithmetic over the course of several years, and they were coming down FedEx packages, right?
Yeah.
Sheets of paper. And if
Yeah.
you go back long enough and you think about, like the tchotchkes that we used to do and things. So that's why, like, is there this place that just has all of these materials just stacked up? And how big is that? And are they maintaining it? And how long before they can dispose of it? I mean, it certainly has been the case. I'm sure I can think of several enforcement actions off the top of my head where the enforcement action has happened years after the 2253 filing, 3, 4, 5 years.
Yep.
There's no inherent statute of limitations that says, oh, your promotional materials have now, are no longer subject to, enforcement activity. Not that I'm aware of. So, how long do they have to maintain that stuff? Where is it?
I mean, the way I think about it is I think I compare it to like the False Claims Act, where the prosecutions come 10 years after, and that's very normal. And they often pull from these 2253 type actions. So
Sure.
your point's well made, which is where are they keeping them? I figure it's just Iron Mountain, to be honest. But
yeah, so I think the people down at FDA are going to be really happy that they no longer have to deal with that, having just electronic files. I'm sure, and I know that I'm blanking on his last name. Jason Cooper, I think is his name, the project manager who's been out talking to industry about this and really trying to help everybody get on board with the ECTD submissions. He's been an evangelist for this, and I think that he's probably going to be the most popular person down at OPDP in a short period because everybody will be on to the electronic reviews. No more paper cuts. I mean, you remember those binders and the number of paper cuts. Oh goodness, my hands hurt just thinking about it.
But what you pointed out also is Jason, assuming it's Jason, Jason's been busy sort of telling industry what they need and being an evangelist. But you also pointed out that the FDA has been sending out updates as well. So if it's all figured out, why the updates? What are they saying in these updates?
Just reminding people. I assume I don't know who those companies are who have not, but I can certainly imagine, let's say you're a late stage clinical trial company, you don't yet have any commercial products. Yeah. This might be news to you because you haven't been paying attention to what's going on in the ad promo world because you don't have any products that you're advertising or promoting. And so there will always be companies who are coming on board to it. And for those companies, they need to do so, right? And I would certainly hope that if you're getting, if your PDUFA date is in the next 6 months, that you would already be on board with ECTD. But again, if you are one of those companies who is late to the game, get on the stick because it's 1 month from today.
So you talk about how the FDA is finally sort of getting on the ball. And speaking of getting on the ball, one of the things we have to think about is the political wins that cause you to get on the ball. And when you think of political wins, you think of the Biden administration. You think about them trying to get a new commissioner in place. So, what do you think? As you know, we currently have Janet Woodcock up there right now,
Mhm.
and that's met some resistance, shall we say? But can you talk a little bit about Dr. Woodcock? What
Yeah, I
her
mean,
popularity? What's
Dr.
happening?
Woodcock has been at the FDA forever, right?
Yeah.
She's incredibly seasoned in a lot of different roles, enormously respected by industry within the agency, and all accounts are that she's doing a great job as the acting commissioner. I think a lot of people expected her to be nominated, and the fact that we're living through a pandemic and we're now 4 months into the administration and there hasn't been a formal nominee. I'm frankly shocked by it. I mean, I went and I looked, just sort of trying to remember, and I think the last time we've gone this long at a new administration changeover was the first George W. Bush administration in 2000, 2001. That's 20 years ago, and there was, of course, the AIDS pandemic going on, but nothing like what we're experiencing today. So I don't really know why it's taking so long. We have a HHS secretary. I occasionally see some new names being floated. Dr. Woodcock came into the acting role from Operation Warp Speed, where she had been taken out of her role setting up the Office of New Drugs and as the head of CDER. And just a few weeks ago, oh goodness, now I'm going to just butcher this woman's name, and I feel awful about it. There is a new confirmed director of CDER. So Dr. Woodcock's former position has been formally occupied. So I won't butcher her name. I'll simply say that a new person has been appointed and confirmed as the director of CDER. So there's no chair for her to go back to, I guess is what I'm saying, right? If she's not going to be the full-time commissioner, then what is she going to do? Is she going to move into an associate commissioner role? Is she going to retire? She's been at the agency for a very long time. It's a distinguished career. I don't know.
But why is she not being formally proposed anymore? What happened?
I mean, the reporting, I don't have any inside information. The reporting is that she was facing some stiff opposition from some activists because of FDA's role in the opioid crisis, and that having having taken too long to address the crisis, that she bears some responsibility for that. And so people did not want her to become the commissioner. As I mentioned, though, she is enormously respected within industry, within the FDA. I know that some people blame her for that. She's overseen so many developments at the agency, the oncology developments and new product approvals. She's been there through the push through the AIDS pandemic and getting new drugs into the marketplace. So she has a very long and distinguished career at the agency.
It's interesting you talk about that. You talk about the opioid crisis because the thing that pops up for me is the recent, and I don't know if you caught this, but they went after an ad agency because of the opioid crisis and asserted that they played a role in it. Did you hear about this or
Are you
not
talking
quite?
about the McKinsey settlement?
No, I'm thinking of Publicis.
Oh, okay. I don't think I do know about this one.
Okay, well, essentially that came out, and the question I was wondering was, in your opinion, do you see? And I'll send you a link to it later on. We'll put a link in the show notes so people can do that as well. But do you see this becoming a harbinger? I don't know how you pronounce that word, but a testament to future situations where agencies will start being prosecuted for their role. And I think it wasn't a DOJ. I think it was actually a state attorney general's office, if I remember correctly. But their role in promoting products and because theoretically under the False Claims Act, as you know, it's anyone who causes or essentially helps to
Induces, yeah.
cause false claim. Exactly. So what's your take on that? Again, recognizing you haven't read anything into the topic because I just mentioned it to you.
Yeah, so for me, it's pure hypothetical, not commenting on the specific facts of the case. I can certainly, so, you know, the way these things happen, right, is that you get creative state attorneys general who go out and try to a new legal theory. And, you know, in the case of the opioid crisis specifically, you know, the financial consequences and the human consequences, death tolls, etc., is so severe that, yeah, they're looking for anyone with deep pockets, and they're willing to try out a new legal theory to see if they can, you know, at a bare minimum, get a settlement, right? In some cases, they actually want, you know, the scalp, they want the conviction. But I think in most cases, what they're most interested in is trying to force a settlement. And if you're able to force one, then a lot of other, you know, large players will simply fall in line, and that will then open up the floodgates. Not knowing the specifics of this case.
Yeah. Conversation for a different time.
Yeah, wouldn't surprise me.
Let me ask you this other question. We were talking about Dr. Woodcock and what role will she play. The other role that came out is Amy Abernathy, and she leaving. Were you aware of that, first of all?
Yeah, I knew that she had left. I don't know where she's gone, and I don't think I've heard of a backfill yet being announced. Did you hear? Yeah.
I haven't heard of a backfill being announced. I actually added her on my LinkedIn, so I'm actually very curious to see where she lands up going. She did add me back. I was very happy about that. But the point being, in my opinion, and this is sort of, maybe it's my perspective on it, probably is my perspective on it, she dragged the FDA kicking and screaming into the digital world, into like data and privacy and all that stuff. The fact that she left, what do you think it means? What is the implication of that on the FDA as it's going to continue further on? Do you think Abakul Patel is going to be able to take the FDA into that next century?
I don't think there's any doubt that they're not going back. Dr. Woodcock just spoke last week at Food Drug Law Institute's annual conference, and I watched her remarks, and she did talk about the contributions that Amy Abernathy had made, and about how, you know, FDA is continuing that journey. That is not going to stop. You know, it wasn't just a single person. It was about the organization taking on this mission. And FDA realizes that they have to play some catch up. They're not, you know, where they need to be in terms of data and technology, but they are. I'd be shocked if they go backwards from here. I mean, if anything, you know, in some of the you know, things that have happened through the pandemic, they've, if anything, seen even more urgency around data collection and using technology to do so.
I agree with you. I don't think that they're going to go back. I guess what I'm really wondering is, without someone who really understands data, can they move forward at the same pace?
Oh, I think they will. Yeah. Well, at the same pace, I don't know. I have no idea whether the pace will be the same or faster, you know, but again, that also gets to who's going to backfill Amy Abernathy, and where, you know, where will it go? Where will that initiative sit? Will it sit in that same role, or will someone else take it on? And it also gets back to who's the new commissioner. Will the new commissioner be that person? I mean, there's a lot of stuff. The new commissioner is not going to be lacking for competing initiatives for what gets highest priority.
The thing that I think is going to be fascinating personally is the emerging importance of the connection, and you actually briefly hinted at it in a conversation we just had a little earlier, on privacy meeting FDA requirements. And as patients start getting more and more into this role, and we're starting to track patients and understanding what their roles are and the data that we get from them. Right now, we're really depending on agencies like ONC to help us, but I have a feeling that you're going to start seeing more interaction, or at least more evident interaction between agencies around patient privacy. What's your take on that? Do you think it's already happening and we just don't see it as much, or do you think that there's going to have to be a new reevaluation of the role of patients and privacy in FDA?
Well, so FDA doesn't have a clear mandate regarding that. They are not the organization responsible for HIPAA. For the most part, the FDA promotional activities fall outside the scope of HIPAA. The only way it tends to come up is in just clear, blatant violations where companies get access to information that they should not, right? So they're not the ones who have the information, and it's not their data. What I am seeing is, that the marketers are absolutely paying attention to this, and it's being driven in part by the state patchwork legislation. First California, then Virginia. Now people are talking about Florida, and Maryland and other states are pushing forward in this. And so the technology companies in part are trying to, for whether you want to say that they're doing so proactively to prevent federal legislation, or because they've caught the religion and are now going to be paying more attention to these concerns, whatever the reason, the marketing landscape is changing. And I'm certainly seeing that marketers, and as part of discussions of materials, this is a topic, which was not previously it just previously was not a topic of conversation. Exactly what data are you collecting? How and why are you collecting that data? Is it the bare minimum that's required to provide the services? Are you reusing that, right? And, some marketers are now adopting that notion of, trying to collect as little data as possible. Some still have the attitude of we want to trace everything.
Are you still seeing your marketers, or have you heard? Let's rephrase the question, because I don't want you answering if you are seeing them. But have you heard of marketers still buying lists?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah.
No, I've seen that pop up. In fact, I'm getting emails from list makers going, "Oh, I can get you a list on blah blah blah." I'm like, really? You can still do that? Isn't your business? Shouldn't it have stopped existing a little bit ago?
Patient lists of sensitive health information? Huh. Okay.
It's not patient lists. They won't couch it in that way. They'll usually couch it as, are you looking to reach people who have this problem?
Sure.
And what does that mean? And are you going to get into a conversation around that? And sometimes it's not about patients. Sometimes it's about the physician. So it's not technically HIPAA, but yeah.
Yeah, well, this is where that whole notion of like developing the patient profiles and the lookalike models, to try to find things, and exactly how much do you really protect patient privacy when you're doing that? Is it even theoretically possible to protect privacy under those circumstances? And that those questions get really tricky very fast. There's no doubt about that. I'm not seeing people who are, actively doing that, and I'm not on the list that you are, apparently. So,
but have you seen them go after the physicians?
Oh, absolutely. Well, yeah. I mean, physicians are much easier to target in that regard, right? So much of that data is publicly available.
But the question becomes, if you're in, say, California, and you have a large presence in California,
Mm-hmm.
and you have over 25,000 lanes in California, do you now have to worry that you're taking physician information, which may not be covered by HIPAA, but could be under CIPRA or CCPA?
Oh,
And
yes.
that's been one of the questions that I've had to ask agencies and marketers, and they look at me like, why are you slowing me down? And I don't know what your take has been so far on that front. Have you basically had to re-educate them, or how's that played out for you?
No, I mean, raising the question and making sure that they're aware of it and are, capable of ensuring compliance with the relevant CCPA requirements. Yeah, that started, back in more than a year ago. So that's, not quite as, much a new thing. But that's, when CCPA came into existence, that was just for everything. And I mean, that was a little bit of, we had the dry run with GDPR and trying to bring GDPR compliance into people's vocabulary, and the data vendors now getting the additional layer. So, they very quickly realized that they need to be sensitive to these concerns.
So we're over time. I usually like to keep you for about 20 to 30 minutes. Let me ask you this question. What's a question you'd like to ask the audience?
Did you get your vaccine yet? If you didn't get your vaccine yet, you need to go get it, right? Everybody, unless you have the allergies or, you're under age of 12, in which case, why are you watching this podcast? But I mean, if you have 11-year-olds in your audience, then your targeting is way off.
Dude, so. I don't know how to tell you this, but this is all 11-year-olds. All we have are 11-year-olds.
Yeah.
We have a major COPA problem right now.
Yeah. So that's my question. And not just question, go get your vaccine, talk to your friends, talk to your family members, encourage them to get the vaccine. I just got my second dose last week on Thursday, so the countdown is on for, the 2 weeks to get full immunity. Very excited by it.
We got to talk about vaccine hesitancy.
Yes.
And how that plays itself out. And you and I need to have a conversation about it, because that's going to be a lot of fun. Because I love the group you're part of, which is Face to Face America.
Face to Face America, f2fa.org is the website. It's an initiative that a friend of mine at Convergence Point Media, Mark Benjamin, asked me to be a part of. And we're just doing what we can to, get the word out and make people aware that they need to get the vaccine.
Speaking of, by the way, Dale, how do people reach you?
They can go to phillycook.com, Philly, COOKE, that E on the end. Very proud of that vowel.
Very proud of that vowel. I haven't heard that term used before, but okay. So let's ask you my quick rapid fire questions. Just two of them. What challenged you this month?
What challenged me this month?
Yep.
Well, trying to figure out what's going on with the FDA commissioner, trying to stay on top of that, seeing some of the recent enforcement coming out of the agency. Yeah.
Okay. And what made you feel like you were successful this week?
Well, so it's Monday. It's Monday. So what made me feel successful last week? Getting the second dose of my vaccine.
There you go. Okay. During this podcast, we landed up talking about the ECTD deadline. Just so everyone remembers, it's June 24, 2021. So you might want to do that. The FDA has put out update number 5 about it. We talked a little bit about what needs to be submitted. We talked about subpart A, subpart E. We talked about should we expect more 2253s. We talked a little bit about publicists and the little controversy going on around them with the state attorney general's office. We talked a little bit about Amy Abernathy leaving. We talked about Dr. Woodcock. We talked about the lack of a official nominee right now and how that's been delayed. We very, very briefly discussed face-to-face America and vaccine hesitancy, but we're going to do a podcast about that because I think it's a really interesting topic, and I'm curious how that plays out. Because quite bluntly, I was on the wrong side of history, so I want to talk a little bit about that as well.
Yeah.
And that's what I have. Did I miss anything, Dale?
No.
Okay. So again, we're both lawyers, so we have to put this in. Nothing in this podcast should be construed as legal or clinical advice of any kind. It's intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. If you like this podcast, please leave a comment, please subscribe. You can find me at Darshan Talks on Twitter or go to our website at darshantalks.com. Dale, this was awesome as always having you on. Thank you.
Thank you, Darshan. This is fun.